Hi.
Hi.
Wait,
How are you guys? How's it?
hi, good.
How are you
Hold on, let me
doing?
turn up my volume.
Good, thank you. Thank you for being so patient. Sorry, it's been kind of a crazy start to the new year for me.
Oh no, don't worry about it. It's fine. Okay, the first thing I wanted to ask actually is I saw this like Zoom video that you did like a couple years ago, and it had to do with like you partnering with heaven. And I think it was like the first time you did, and so I'm really curious about that, like how that came to be.
I was actually I mean, that was I don't know what to say other than I'm kind of just blown away myself. It came right when the pandemic was actually happening, and Greg Araki had contacted me and told me about it.
Oh yeah.
And I guess Mark Jacobs had approached Greg and had come up with him, and I believe it was a few people, him and Ava, and I think I'm trying to remember a couple other names, but they were big fans of Greg's movies and thought about doing, a heaven like a line or including it in their line Heaven, and they contacted Greg, and then Greg contacted me, and I of course jumped on
Yeah.
because that's so beyond like I still think that's so cool.
Yeah, because like I mean, we live in LA, so like I visit that shop every so often, and I know they try to be as on trend as possible. But I mean, I'm just like, I don't know how exactly they discovered that. I think because like, COVID, everyone like dug deep into, looking at older media. But I'm also like kind of curious, like, at least how do you think people like kind of resurface these like movies and stuff, you know?
I'm not really sure, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's the coolest thing in the world. I mean, since the movies we made, I think were very much, I mean, and still now they're a part of us, but they're very much a reflection of who we were and where we were at that time, and definitely our perception and view of the world around us and what's going on. And I think if anything, it's kind of insane that, because we thought we'd kind of move past beyond that, like we were tackling these issues and we would move past beyond it. And we didn't think that we would be back kind of retackling these issues 30 years later.
Yeah.
At the same time, Greg and I couldn't be more, I think blown away and moved that, you know, that you guys know our movies and have watched them, because they really do mean a lot to us, and they always have. And if anything, it's really cool to see that, we weren't the only ones who saw that the world was nuts, that like
Yeah.
as insane as what it really was, and kind of rebelling against that kind of, you know, that so-called normalcy in quotes, if I could do the air quotes.
Yeah.
But
Um,
that was just not how we felt then, and it's not how we feel now.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's super cool. How did you like get into making the kind of offbeat movies or like into that? Like, I don't know, like,
I was
yeah.
just I guess I was just really lucky, I guess. I met Greg when I was 18, when I first came to Hollywood, and I wanted to be an actor, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And we made our first film Totally Fucked Up together. And then I worked with another contemporary of Greg, who I still work with as well as working with Greg, named John Moritz Sugu,
Oh,
who does these kind of really, kind of queer, off the wall, avant garde, like punk rock films, DIY for sure. So if
Yeah.
Greg's movies are like independent, like John's are like underground.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because actually, he'll give me a second. I actually just went and bought a bunch of his movies on this DVD here.
Oh, that's so
So cool.
sick.
And it basically has, I think, seven of his movies back there,
Oh, wow.
seven or eight. It's got My Degeneration Hippie Porn, which clips of that appear in Totally Fucked Up, and some of Greg's early movies is being, a friend and a big influence on Greg Rocky as well. So naturally, I was turned on to the things that he was, interested in, and that his friends were doing. And it just so happened that we had very, similar, if not the same sensibilities, watching the same sorts of movies or listening to the same sorts of music, having the same sorts of problem with the government, with everybody around us, and kind of wanting to break out and do something about it and say something, and,
Yeah.
have a voice for, those, including us, who felt we just weren't being represented in any way. I think naturally by affiliation and relation, I got involved, with other filmmakers of the same, I think caliber, over the years, after that was James Marandino, who I did the SLC Punk movie with, and
Oh yeah.
Americana. I've done a few projects with him since then. Um, Lucky McKee, of course, with May. I mean, again, I think when I look back on it, I was just very, very fortunate because you don't really, unless you're a big movie star, you don't really have control over the things you're doing. So you hope that you work again, or that I hope I get another job or a movie, and if I do, I hope it's something cool.
Yeah.
And I guess when I look back on it now, it was like I was saying before, just working with Greg and knowing Greg and his contemporaries, I think kind of really helped me, not only to work, but to work on, I think, kind of cool, avant-garde, I think, kind of out there projects that Hollywood wasn't making and still quite isn't making as often. They're still making, like I see that Saltburn behind you, and I love
Yeah.
Saltburn. So they're still making cool movies that push the boundaries. And I think that that's what's really important. And that's the things that I have always been drawn to. And I know that Greg's Araki's drawn to as well. I
Yeah.
get, over the years, I say I was raised in the school of Greg Araki, I guess.
Yeah. That's really sick.
So back then, what was like type of stuff you were listening to and watching that really like inspired you to do that type of
Well, it,
movies?
well, Greg was, when I met him, the thing that we had in common right away was music. So I love the fact that we were listening to the same music. In fact, Greg was so, I think, and he still is so knowledgeable about music that a lot of the music I listen to now that he turned me on to is the same things I listen to now, like Slow Dive and Ride and My Bloody Valentine, and those sorts of things haven't changed.
Was
If,
there?
it's any, then that's what we were listening to back then. I think if anything, it's just we listened to a broader spectrum of music than we did then, as to where I think shoegaze, you didn't, maybe there was 10 or 15 bands or so. Now there's 50 bands, there's so many bands you can just dive in. And I love that. I love that every time I listen to something that's from a genre of music that I used to listen to, that I almost love everything that I hear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to listen to that instead of every once in a while having to listen to someone else's music for an hour. And then one song comes on, you're like, oh, that, like, I like music like that, like that song. So it's really cool to see it kind of blow opens.
Well, and I think with like being like having more access to other platforms instead of it just being like, CD or vinyl, like you hear so much more. And I think that exposure is like kind of crazy. I mean, because I wasn't even like around when there was no Spotify, God forbid, but like, I don't know, it just must be really different. Like
It,
being,
it is different, but it was a natural progression. When I think about, I mean, I still buy physical media to be quite honest, but I don't digest movies or albums the way I used to. Used to maybe I had like $50 for the month extra, so I'd buy a couple albums with that, and that's all I had. And then
yeah,
maybe your friend had a couple albums, and you can kind of switch. But so you didn't get a lot of access to the music that you have now. So I know when we started to get blog spots and be able to download stuff, and it was a lot cheaper to download it than buy the physical media, all of a sudden, instead of digesting, 4 or 5 albums a month, I was digesting 40 or 50 albums a month.
yeah,
And I still do that. And I can listen to it, and I do love it. There's a handful of stuff that I've been just listening to in the last couple of days, like beyond all the shoegaze stuff, I still like a lot of old post-punk stuff. So I really like the new Vaccines album. I really like the new Clockworks album. Um, of course, some of the newer, I should say, more alternative music like Cigarettes After Sex or Twin Tribes or uh, Glass Spells I've been listening to a lot lately, and Body of Light. And of course, God rest Louis's soul today, rest in peace, but Soft Moon. I was a big fan of Soft Moon. Still, I'll always be a big fan of Soft Moon. So I think we're really lucky in this time to have so much great, great music. Everything from like Bauhaus and Love and Rockets to Boy Harsher,
yeah.
So cool.
and I lose my mind over all that stuff.
It's pretty crazy.
Speaking of music, do you have any idea why they changed the Killing Moon at the start of Donnie Darko's to In Excess Never Tear Us Apart?
I
I thought,
do actually. I do. So believe it or not, there's the very first version of Donnie Darko is in between the original theatrical version and the director's cut. And it originally had Never Tear Us Apart first. That's
oh,
the original the original order of the songs and the songs we had and how they went. I think the only difference in the original Sundance version was instead of Notorious, we had West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys.
Oh,
That's cool.
that's great.
And they wanted so much money. I think it's like $250,000 or something. And Duran Duran's like, we'll give you Notorious for $5,000. So it was like, we'll go with Duran Duran. And also Duran Duran's Duran Duran. I used to listen to Duran Duran when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I still love Duran Duran. I
yeah.
think they're amazing.
There's
So it was super, super cool. As heartbroken as I was, and I know we all were, because we loved, if you knew the original version, you saw it, you loved West End Girls, and you couldn't imagine anything else.
yeah,
But Notorious was, I mean, now that we see it, most people can't imagine anything but Notorious.
yeah.
So we were very fortunate in that sense, but we had that, and we didn't have the Mad World yet, I don't think. I think it was U2's Bad was
Uh-huh.
the end of Donnie Darko.
Yeah,
Because it was still not quite finished. We're still looking for temp music. So that's a very, very interesting cut, which is also the edit is in between the first theatrical cut that everyone saw and then the director's cut that came later, which was 22 minutes longer. So the original first cut is in between those two. It's 10 minutes longer, but not 22 minutes. So it had some of those scenes, but not everything.
yeah,
And then it had those original music cues, with the exception of West End Girls for Duran Duran Notorious and U2's Bad instead of Gary Jules' Mad World.
yeah. That's so interesting because the first time I watched the movie, it had the Killing Moon, and so I was like, oh, like that's, and I
It's
watched.
so appropriate, right?
It really
It
is.
really fits, and so I bought it on DVD and I played it, and I was like, what's going on? Like it didn't fit right. I was like, I can't even watch. I don't know. Like I had this thing. I was like, I need to watch the original or the one with the Killing Moon because it
The
felt
one
weird.
that he adjusted. Yeah. So what ended up happening is, and believe it or not, it's Christopher Nolan who's responsible for Donnie Darko coming out.
Oh my
He
god.
did a little movie called Memento, and nobody wanted to pick up Donnie Darko, and Christopher Nolan loved it, and he championed it. And I think because of Christopher Nolan, who I've not met, I don't know him, but I thank him. I'm not only a huge fan of his movies, but I thank him every day for helping us get Donnie Darko out there, because I do think it's a great movie. I think it's a cool little movie that's, of course, it stood the test of time, and we never expected it to become kind of this cult hit or the response from it, but it is something that we all wholly truly believed in. Everyone from, you know, Jake to the actress who played Grandma Death and everyone in between, we all loved the movie we were making, and we had a great time making it, and we were super happy and over the moon the way it came out. So, and if anything, nobody wanted to pick it up. Christopher Nolan helped us get it distributed, and then the distribution company goes, all right, well, we'll pick it up, but you have to cut 10 minutes out. We don't care what 10 minutes, but you just have to cut 10 minutes out. So once he cut those 10 minutes out, he could also sort of redo those music cues, and he could also get Gary Jules to come in and do that version. I'm not sure how that came about, but they were able to get that version that Gary Jules did for us. And um, the ending montage, there's also a couple scenes that were not in the original Sundance cut. So I came back maybe about 6 months before the movie was released, and I filmed a little piece of the camera going over the sketches of the bunny mask and Frank with both eyes touching his face like he knew something had happened, like the residual effect from the 28 days before, now that Donnie had put everything to right by going back where the jet engine was through the porthole and coming back 28, saving everybody in the universe from imploding
Mhm.
and setting it all to right. And yeah, so that's kind of how, like, the whole without being too long-winded about it, kind of explanation of how those songs ended up being rearranged. And it was really just an opportunity to re-edit the film in a way that, was, I think, more conducive, as like you saw and remember, to a shorter film, to a shorter cut, and a little bit more money to kind of get a little bit more music. Because like we were saying, we couldn't afford or like I was saying, we couldn't afford the Pet Shop Boys, and we
Yeah.
didn't have the Gary Jules yet.
That's really interesting. I literally watched the movie the other night with my mom, and I was like, this is like a perfect question because I was genuinely so confused. I was like, why? And it's like on different streaming services, it's different even. So I was like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, they showed different cuts of the movie. It's interesting. I know one exists, but it's not a very good copy. It was VHS only, but there is a VHS copy of that original Sundance cut floating around somewhere.
Mhm.
It's probably
I
just
mean, if anything, I would love for them to release that someday, because I think for the fans and for all of you who know the other two, you can feel the difference between this one and the other two. It's a different movie slightly, and
I'm
it's
sure.
still, to be quite honest, my favorite cut of the film, the one in between, the one that the not finished one.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
I like the other versions too, but I love the very, maybe because it's what I saw the first time, so it has a special place in my heart.
That would be cool to see. Um, Regarding the trilogy of the other, the Gregoraki movies.
The
Um,
teen children, yeah.
I was also curious, as I feel like at least Nowhere is the least talked about movie. And maybe it's because like with the partnerships with Heaven, like I know that there was a totally fucked up one, and then there wasn't a Doom Generation one, but people I feel like know that one the most. But like with Nowhere, I'm just curious because I have a poster of it. Like I don't know, it's just been in my room.
That's cool. I
Like
love that. I love hearing that.
yes. I'm just curious because like also I think it's kind of one that like is harder to find to watch, I guess. I don't know.
Nowhere's actually just been released on iTunes, so it's now available streaming.
Oh.
Um, we had a big problem with the distribution company after we were released, so we were able to get totally fucked up. Can I say that? Totally effed up. We were able to get that out on DVD, and then we were able to do the same on Doom Generation, but there were some issues where the company had there was a laser disc of it, but then they got sold to someone else, and then someone else didn't think that we had enough of a fan base to make those DVDs. They wanted a lot of money to do it. And so we kind of had to wait for the rights to kind of come back to Greg and his producer Marcus Hu from Strand, which now they have just reverted back to him. So we were doing a re-release last year with a 4K restoration and 9 restored scenes that nobody's ever seen unless you saw it at Sundance. And that the Doom Generation 4K version, which came out last year, and the totally fucked up 2K version, I can now officially say, as of 2 days ago, the official box set will be released by Criterion fall this year. So around September, you'll be able to get Nowhere on Blu-ray as well. And it's going to have tons of extras of all these sorts of pictures and videos and all kinds of extras of everything from the moment that I met Greg, because we're going to include it all on the Blu-ray,
That's cool.
to the present day and kind of everything in between. And there may be a few other cool little freebies or maybe some older movies that we're going to sneak on there that have not been released. So we'll see. I mean, but I can officially say that not only is Nowhere officially being released, it's official now on iTunes, but the Blu-ray will be out later this year. But the entire box set of the trilogy will be out this year. And we promise to make it worth everybody's worthwhile because it's taken, I don't know, almost 30 years to bring it out.
Yeah. That's really cool.
So you're actually the first people that I'm actually announcing this to. I haven't posted it on Instagram. I haven't said anything to anybody yet.
That's sick. Well, hopefully if I get my money, I'll buy it. But
Well, I'm sure we can get you a promo copy if in air quotes, but I'm sure we can get you a promo copy
that would be
for,
sick.
for the press, for the press.
Yes. Okay, this is the last thing I can think of. But like, I mean, you said you're working on another movie. Are there other like collabs or anything that like you want to or plan on doing like besides like with Heaven?
I'm open to these collabs. I mean, in all honesty, I would love to do more collabs with Mark. If he ever wants anything from me, I'll always be there for him. He brought me on for the Heaven collaboration with Greg a couple years ago, and then we did one with Deftones earlier in 2023 that I have to post. I got so caught up, kind of touring and working on a couple of other things, and then with the strike, and I never ended up posting the collaboration I did with Mark Jacobs and Chino from Deftones. It's really cool,
Yeah.
and right before the Donnie Darko one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm definitely open to doing that. And if anybody else anybody else would, I'd love to if it's like really cool. But other than that, it's just like prepping for more work. I know Richard Kelly's working on something. Hopefully I'll be working on that with him as well. I know Greg's got a new project that he's working on, and I don't know if I'll be working on this one in particular, but Greg and I will always be working together in the future, as well as the director of SLC Punk, James Marandino. There's another film I did recently that's coming out soon called The First Circle, based on like these people trapped in the first circle of hell. And if it goes well, we'll do the other 8 circles, second through the ninth, which is each level's deeper and deeper into hell. And I think that's, hopefully it turns out well, but it's been fun to make, and I think that would be a cool series to get out to you all.
Yeah.
Um, so there's definitely a lot of cool things in the works, as
Yeah.
well as I don't know if I can announce it, but we were talking to Slow Dive about trying to do something together. So let's see if we
Okay,
can do something with
so cool.
Slow Dive, because music is such a big part of an inspiration for Greg's writing and his movies, and for me, for my writing and my acting as well. And so, we were kind of speaking to Neil and Rachel in the band about that a little bit. And let's see what happens this year. They just started a new tour in Europe, and they'll be back here in the spring. So hopefully we can speak to them a little bit about that
So,
around that. But there's definitely some cool things coming up very soon. I promise you that. So,
So
besides the box set, keep your eyes and your ears peeled.
I'll be doing that.
cool.
I don't know. Is there anything else to do?
What's your favorite Slow Dive song?
Oh God, that's a tough one. For a long time, is When the Sun Hits.
Yeah.
Then they have, I got to really say off the new album, I really love Shanty.
Hmm.
Like Shanty just sends me some. They have so many songs that send me somewhere else, but more recently, I'd probably say it was off the new album, probably be Shanty.
Yeah.
I really love Shanty, and I also love this unreleased song they have called "I Saw the Sun."
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's beautiful. "I Saw the Sun." One that they've been playing during the tour, an old song called "Sleep." Another one called Silver Screen. Um, I Bleed, Joy. So, but like a bunch of these demos that never got released that I always love those songs. So maybe because they never got released, I have a special affinity for them. But I love those unreleased songs. And then of the new stuff, it's definitely, I would say, Shanty from the new album. I'm just obsessed with that. I'm obsessed with the new album.
yeah.
I'm obsessed with the last album. I'm obsessed with all their I got problems. Good problem. Good
Do you
problem.
have like song recommendations in general? And like maybe movie too?
Yeah, you know what I recommend for a lot of the fans of Gregor Rocky, and just because when I met him, I was watching his other movies, and I was talking about being raised in the school with the sensibility of Gregor Rocky. But for those of you who haven't seen The Living End by
Oh,
Gregor Rocky, I highly recommend The Living End. It's crazy, it's nuts. When I met him, it was the beginning of the whole thing that kind of broke him out. That eventually he did totally fucked up after that. Then he did Doom Generation, and you'll actually see between the Doom Generation and the Living End, you're going to see some threads and some universal motifs that tie those movies together. That they're very, very similar movies.
hmm. I know
It's that,
I haven't seen it and I don't know where to watch it, but I feel like I
I
saw
believe it should be available streaming, and it's definitely available on Blu-ray and DVD.
I'll look it in.
Because I just got another copy of it on DVD, but I know there's a Blu-ray copy of it too. But I highly recommend that. Another movie, it comes out of the same kind of time period. I was highly influenced and again very lucky to be working with Greg. So he was part of what was called the queer new wave that broke out of the early '90s, and Todd Haynes and Tom Kalin being two other really, I think, really incredible filmmakers that had made these incredible movies that came out of that time. So one of them I would like to say was called, well, not like to say, it's called Poison. I would check out Poison if you can by Todd Haynes. Swoon by Tom Kalin if you can. And they come from that same time period. And maybe one that's a bit more obscure, but it's actually one of my favorites is by a filmmaker named Christopher Munch, who did this movie called The Hours and the Times, The Hours and Times. And it's about a 60-minute, 55, 60-minute movie, so not quite a full feature, but it's this fictional weekend that John Lennon and his manager, Brian Epstein, maybe it was fictional, maybe it wasn't fictional, but this weekend that they spent together the year before the Beatles, or the summer before the Beatles broke big, and where they may have had some kind of little relationship or something, like maybe but these movies that I was highly influenced, and I've just recently gone back to them, are movies I would highly recommend. And of course, I think the most recent movie that I saw, I would recommend, but I think you have it on your wall already. That would be
Oh.
Saltburn. Yeah. And then of music, of course, of the new Slow Dive. I'm obsessed with this band called The Clockworks. They're like this Irish punk post-punk band, but I am really obsessed with them. Body of Light, Boy Harsher. Um, there's this other kind of shoegaze kind of band that's not very well known, but I'm really obsessed with called Under Electric Light. Huge fan of them. And then this other band recently that I'm kind of getting into called oh God, why am I forgetting their name? English Teacher, I believe is the name of it. They're from Scotland. I think they're called English Teacher, but they're really good. Like punk rock and kind of genre, it crosses all these genres, but are very cool. So I'm kind of definitely, I think I spent like the good morning, even today, just listening to a bunch of old vaccines or new vaccines and old Clockwork stuff that's not available anymore. Because they just released their old album. And so coincidentally or ironically, they kind of erased some of their early songs and scrubbed it off the net. It was like, good thing I downloaded those, man. I still have those. I'm holding on. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. The whole world needs to hear this stuff. It's so good. Oh,
Actually.
and Drab Majesty. Drab Majesty.
Oh, okay.
Love Drab Majesty. If you don't know Drab Majesty, check out Drab Majesty. They were touring with Slow Dive.
Oh, I want to go see Slow Dive.
Playing Ventura.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk too much. I had a cup of
No.
coffee before. I'm like, I better be ready to talk for this interview.
Yeah.
No, don't worry about it. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to Blake too.
Blake says hello, by the way.
Oh my God, I say hi back.
I'll let her know. I'll let her know. She texted. I'll text her back right after.
Yes, she used to work with my friend. That's how I got to know her. So
She's amazing. I mean, she's my girlfriend, so I love her. So she's
yes.
amazing. But she's my, as we would say, she's my big cheese. She's my cheese, my lovely cheese. I love my cheese.
Yes. Well, how cute. Thank you so much again. Yeah, I don't know. Nice to meet you.
You too, and hopefully we all get a chance to meet in person sometime soon and hang out or whatnot.
Yeah, of course. We'll figure something out. Thank you
Yeah,
so
for sure. My
Awesome.
pleasure. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. I'd be
Sure.
more than happy to answer anything you got.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one, you too.
You
Bye.
too.